Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our board meeting. Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, public comment. Anyone care to speak? Oh, that's right. Take roll.
Trustee Lautner?
Here.
Here.
Trustee Council?
Here.
Trustee Sheehan is absent. Trustee Stewart?
Here.
Trustee Caputo?
Here.
President DeCipio?
Here.
A quorum is present, Mr. President.
That's why you're my clerk, see? Thank you, Reagan. Before we start, I just want to introduce Ed Hurst. He's our new building director, and his wife Joan is here with him. Welcome, Ed. Thank you for coming, and thank you for being a part of our great organization here in the Grange Park. Thank you. Okay, Megan, consent agenda?
There's nobody, okay. The items on this evening's consent agenda are as follows. A, approval of minutes. 1, Village Board meeting September 26, 2023. 2, Village Board closed session meeting September 26, 2023. 3, Village Board work session meeting October 10th, 2023. B, action, accounts payable and payroll summary, motion 1, to authorize the president and chairperson of the finance committee to sign the register for bills and authorize the treasurer and village clerk to sign checks in payment of operating bills and salaries as itemized in the check registers. And motion 2, to authorize the village treasurer and village clerk to sign checks in the payment of payroll and other bills that become due between this date and the next village board meeting, with subsequent approval of the payroll register and voucher register by the Board of Trustees at its next meeting.
Thank you, Megan. Motion to approve consent agenda is presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Megan, call the roll.
Trustee Lautner?
Yes.
Trustee Zora?
Yes.
Trustee Council?
Yes.
Trustee Stewart?
Yes.
Trustee Caputo?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously, Mr. President.
Thank you, Megan. Next up, we have village manager's report. Julia?
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I have just one item to report on this evening, and that item is included in the board packet. And the purpose of the memo is to seek village board approval for the appointment of Edward Hurst as the village's Director of Building and Inspectional Services and Building Commissioner. I will provide a little bit of background on this item, and then we will need a motion and a second and a vote to approve this. And then there will be a swearing in. So recently in September, our previous Director of Building and Inspectional Services resigned to accept a similar position in another municipality. We are very fortunate to be able to have a top caliber candidate for the board's consideration this evening. Mr. Hurst, Ed, and just a little bit of information, Ed, your future seat is right there next to Dean. He is an experienced manager with a vast knowledge of building standards, code compliance, construction, and project management. He most recently served as a Community Development Inspector 2 for the Village of Addison, and prior to joining the public sector, he enjoyed a successful career in the architectural profession. He managed an architecture and engineering department for Savan Multi-Site Solutions and supervised various architectural teams at McDonald's Corporation, where he served as the Director of Architectural Services, or the department. He also worked with many municipalities in his career while working for Zismopolis Architects. He is a licensed architect in Illinois and has a Bachelor of Architecture from the University of Illinois in Chicago. Staff recommends that the village board approve the appointment of Edward Hurst to the position of Director of Building and Inspectional Services and Building Commissioner. And that concludes the background of this item, and I turn it back to you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Okay, if someone would care to make a motion?
I can make a
Zora?
motion. I'd like to make a motion to appoint Edward Hurst as Director of Building and Inspectional Services and Building Commissioner.
Second.
Motion and a second. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Ed's a great guy. That's what I hear. Thank you, Ed. Megan, call the roll.
Trustee Lautner?
Yes.
Trustee Zora?
Yes.
Trustee Council?
Yes.
Trustee Stewart? Trustee Caputo?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously, Mr. President.
Thank you, Megan. Welcome, Ed. Would you care to say anything?
Well, he has to get
Okay.
sworn in.
Maybe introduce Joan? I don't know.
Yes. Come on up, and do you want to come up, Meg, or do you want to?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
There it goes. Okay. If you can raise your right hand and repeat after me, please. I, Edward Hurst,
I, Edward Hurst,
hereby solemnly swear
hereby solemnly swear
that I will uphold and defend
that I will uphold and defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
of the United States of America
of the United States of America
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of Illinois,
of the State of Illinois,
and I will faithfully carry out
and I will faithfully carry out
all the duties imposed upon
all the duties imposed upon
and entrusted in me
and entrusted in me
as Director of Building and Inspectional Services, Building Commissioner,
as Director of
Building
Building
and Inspectional
and
Services,
Inspectional Services,
Building Commissioner
Building Commissioner
of the Village of Grange Park,
of the Village of Grange Park,
Cook County.
Cook County, Illinois.
So Ed, real quick, Mr. President, a couple of fun facts. Ed is originally from Brookfield, Illinois, and he purchased his first house in LaGrange Park, Illinois. So it's really nice to have Ed working so close to the communities where he is so familiar. Ed, would you like to introduce your lovely partner?
I'd like to introduce my wife, Joan. We've been married for over 30 years. We have 2 sons, both out of college. One is engaged to get married in the spring, so we're looking forward to that. And Joan grew up in North Riverside, so both of us went to the same high school, Riverside Brookfield. Didn't know each other then. We met at a friend's wedding. Her friend married my friend, and the rest is history. So yeah, born and raised in this area, and it's exciting to come back. So thank you very much.
Great having you, Ed. Thank you.
And welcome aboard.
Is that all you have, Julia?
That concludes my report,
Great.
Mr. President.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to Administration Committee, Trustee Council.
Thank you, President DeCipio. The administration report is as follows. Halloween trick-or-treating hours are from 3 to 8 p.m. on Tuesday, October 31st for the Village of LaGrange Park, Village of LaGrange, Village of Western Springs, and the City of Countryside. Enjoy the holiday and remember to use caution while driving throughout the village during trick-or-treating hours. Vehicle sticker and dog license renewals. New vehicle stickers and dog licenses are now available for purchase, and the deadline for renewal is October 31st. Residents are encouraged to renew their stickers and licenses online. Please visit the village's website for more information and call the Village Hall with any questions. The Smashing Pumpkin event. The LaGrange Park Sustainability Commission's annual Smashing Pumpkin event will take place on Saturday, November 4 from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Retire your jack-o'-lantern and other live pumpkin decor in an environmentally friendly way by dropping them off at the Public Works Facility, 937 Barnesdale Road. Pumpkins will then be transported to a local farm for composting. And the reminder to not to forget to fall back, the Central Standard Time officially begins at 2 a.m. on Sunday, November 5th. Remember to change your smoke detector batteries when you move your clocks back 1 hour. And next, would you like me to proceed?
Yes, please.
Next on my agenda is the lobbyist services. The purpose is to consider a proposal for lobbyist services provided by Taft Public Affairs Strategies Group. The general background. At the July Village Board meeting, the Village Board discussed whether to pursue lobbyist services provided by Taft Public Affairs Strategies Group, with Mike Zalewski as the principal point of contact to the village. At the conclusion of the discussion, the Village Board recommended that staff pursue at least one additional proposal. Staff reached out to 2 additional consultants providing lobbyist services, namely Chris Nybo and Casper and Nottage. While we anticipated a total of 3 consultant options, Casper and Nottage declined to provide a proposal. In September, President DeCipio met with 2 lobbyists with the assistance of trustees Jamie Zora and manager Cedillo. In discussing candidate experience on a number of topics, each is well qualified to provide lobbying services. Copies of the 2 proposals received are included in our memorandum. Each proposal carries a 1-year term. The proposals do not specify any minimum number of hours per month that must be devoted to LaGrange Park. The hours will be somewhat fluid depending on the time of year, the work necessary for the priority project, and or legislative issue and level of support necessary. Recommendation. Given the proposed strategies for the village's priorities, it is recommended that the Village Board consider Mike Zalewski with Taft. Mike has extensive relationships with Illinois legislators and state agencies and would be a best choice at this time. Mike Zalewski served on the Illinois House of Representatives 23rd District, which is including LaGrange Park, for 14 years, and he is very familiar with our community. In addition, we spoke with 2 state legislators, 1 past and 1 present, and each spoke highly of Mr. Zalewski and felt he would be particularly effective for LaGrange Park. Mr. Zalewski reported at the interview with President DeCipio that we would be the sole municipal client for the term of the agreement. Motion action requested. This item is for discussion and action. I'd like to make a motion to authorize, right into the motion, right?
Yes.
To authorize the village manager to prepare a contract for services with Taft Public Affairs Strategies Group with Mike Zalewski as the principal point of contact. This contract would come before the village board for its approval at the November 14th village board work session. The proposals in the agenda memo dated July 20th of 2023 are in our packet tonight.
Trustee Council, would you mind reading the motion one more time, please?
Sure. Sure. Motion to authorize the village manager to prepare a contract for services with Taft Public Affairs Strategies Group with Mike Zalewski as the principal point of contact.
Thank you. I'll
Sure.
entertain a second.
Second.
Motion second, discussion, Trustee Council.
Thank you, President DeCipio. I have a couple of things. I know we received proposals from Christopher Nybo and also from Michael Zalewski. I thought it was kind of interesting that some of the villages nearby, namely Westchester, North Riverside, Hinsdale, received quite a substantial amount of appropriations. Westchester actually received $3.5 million for their new village hall, or for a new village hall. Riverside received $650,000 for police station repairs and some other public works projects, and Hinsdale received a $500,000 appropriation for their parking deck and $1 million in Metro Capital investments. So I have a couple of questions regarding the proposal of Taft. I'm not sure who to address these to.
Just ask him.
So, my one question is, what has been the track record of Taft with regards to securing funds for neighboring villages? I didn't notice any particulars in their overview. And then the village board memo that was sent out on October 18 as part of our board packet states that the proposals don't specify any minimum number of hours per month that must be devoted to Grange Park. The hours would be fluid depending on the time of year, type of project, and the priority of the project as well. Since the hours would be fluid, I would like to see a provision written into the contract that the village receive status progress reports either monthly or every other month, considering the pay that the lobbyists will be getting for their services. And to say that we have not had a lobbyist in the village of Grange Park for quite a long time. I'd like to make sure, and I know Julia will handle this, that we have accountability because this is a significant undertaking for the village. So, you know, as long as I know, you know, that we'll have some accountability, whether he reports to you or whether he reports to the village as a whole, the village board as a whole. I would like to see something, you know, on a regular basis. And I know based on the board memo, he's forged a lot of relationships with a lot of people in the area. I feel that we would benefit from those relationships because he knows a lot of the people in Springfield, because obviously he's worked with them for a lot of years. So, you know, that being said, I know it's a tough thing to take on for financial reasons. I just feel that we've talked to a lot of different people, and it seems that either they're not able to get us the funding that we need, or the funds just aren't available for whatever reason it is. I just hope that with hiring a lobbyist, that they will be able to go back at, you know, take another bite at the apple, because I know President DeCipio and Manager Cedillo have been exhausting in their efforts to try to get us some funding. So I would really hope for some, some accountability as far as that
Sure.
goes.
Thank you, trustee Council. I'll answer the first one, then I'll pass it on to Julia for the accountability part. But Representative Zaleski has joined a new law firm, and they put him in charge of the lobby part of the firm. And we'll be his first client, so he's overly excited, enthusiastic, and I know he'll do a great job for us. So Julia, with that, maybe I'll send it over to you so you can explain how we would manage the accountability.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. We would be his first municipal client. He has other clients at this time, including other taxing bodies. With regard to your comments about accountability, I couldn't agree more. That's the kind of feedback I think we're looking for, since we are going to be working towards an agreement with Taft, and it's good to include any deliverables. When we worked with Ganchow's, Chris Ganchow's consulting firm, Cagwood, I think we had worked with Cagwood Consulting for a period of 10 years, I think at least. And over the years, I think it was really important that we focused in on the deliverables, because so much of the time it's really hard to understand the tangible benefits, because so much of the work that they do is building relationships and constant meetings. So absolutely, I think we plan to build the deliverables into that agreement. In our conversations with Mike Zaleski, it was important that there is a written report as well as meetings with the village board, and so we can certainly quantify that in the scope of work that we put together for the board.
Thank you, Julia. That was one of my questions, what are his projected deliverables? And so hopefully those details will get ironed out as we progress. I did notice 3 of the key points that you wanted him to address were the central storm water, which is the flooding issue, the IDOT project along the Grange Road, and the the lead service. I would, in light of the lead service costing so much money, I would like to see that be either second in line or first in line for appropriations, because definitely communities are going to need that kind of help. And based on what Rick Ratty had said in the past, it's very hard to find funding for this project. So I would hope that we could concentrate our efforts on those key things. So thank you, guys.
Great, thank you, trustee Council. Anything, trustee Caputo?
No, I'm okay. I don't have any questions.
Great. Any comments, trustee Zora?
So just because I was involved, I wanted to say a couple things. As President DeCipio stated, we would be Mike's only municipal client right now, and I think that this could make or break their lobbyist pursuits, and I believe they said that we would be the only one while we have a contract with them too. So I think that's also important, because Chris, although I really liked Chris, I feel like he has a pretty heavy load right now, and we didn't want to get lost because these issues are pretty important to us. Mike also said he had federal and state connections, and Chris did not have any federal connections. So I think that's important with the lead service line issue, because if it has to go back federally, Mike could possibly help us with that. So that was important. And he's also really familiar with our village because he represented us. So I think those were my critical points in selecting him, if that helps. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Zora. Trustee Stewart, any comments?
I just wanted to say that, you know, what we're paying this lobbyist and the potential benefits of him helping our village, I think is worth the risk. And I think that all of the efforts that Julia and Maggie and President have done to try to secure funds, I think that's an argument alone that we should have some help and give this person a chance. So, you know, I'm all for it, and I think it would be great for our village.
Great. Thank you, trustee Stewart. Trustee Laudner?
Thank you, Mr. President. I too support this decision and effort, and extend appreciation to Trustee Zara and others that looked into this, Trustee Council, President DeCipio. We had lobbying services in the past that I think worked out very beneficial. As it turns out, the cost on this, while it is a significant number, there's no question, is not that substantially more than what we were paying at the past, and the return on investment at that time certainly proved well worth it, and the amount of effort that it took to gain the grants and the monies that we did due to the efforts of President DeCipio and Village Manager Cedillo on this. You know, it was on top of everything else they had going on. Took a lot, and fortunately we had some success, but I think there's a whole lot more monies out there that you know, this type of service can be a benefit to the village. So I think we're all taking a wait and see attitude. I think having the reporting structure in place that you know, identifies the return on the investment of it, and hopefully that'll be the beginning of a longer term relationship that really proves beneficial to the village. So I'm excited about moving forward with this, and I know we all looked at the big number of the annualized 36,000, a big number, but you know, just keep in mind it's a month by month basis through the end of the fiscal year, and that we'll be tracking the benefit of that and making the decisions as we move forward into the next budget year. So thanks for everyone's efforts and moving forward. I think it'll be of value to the village to us.
Thank you, Trustee Lautner. Megan, call the roll.
Trustee Lautner?
Yes.
Trustee Zora?
Yes.
Trustee Council?
Yes.
Trustee Stewart?
Yes.
Trustee Caputo?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously, Mr. President.
Thank you, Megan. And thank you, everyone who participated in the discussion. Moving on, thank you, Trustee Council, for your report.
Thank you, President DeCipio.
Building and Zoning Committee, Trustee Zora.
I would like to report the building department activities for September 2023. 73 building permits were issued in September 2023 compared to 93 issued in 2022. As of September, the pace of permit submittals year to date is lagging behind the pace of submittals at this time last year by approximately 13%. Estimated construction costs for last month were just over $2 million. Permit fees collected were just over $34,000, significantly lower due to Plymouth Place permits issued in last September. 187 inspections were conducted this past month compared to 219 in September 2022. 6 inspections were not approved. Total of 19 new code enforcement cases were recorded last month. 9 were closed and 10 are remaining with further enforcement action. And that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Zora. Moving on to Engineering Capital Projects Committee, Trustee Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. Design work has started for the 2024 MWRD Green Alley project. The village has received funding from the MWRD to construct a permeable alley north of 31st Street between Newberry and Blanchard Avenue. The MWRD will reimburse the village for construction costs in an amount not to exceed $238,163. These alleys are in critical need of reconstruction, with the added benefit of reducing stormwater runoff from entering the combined sewer system. Construction is scheduled for 2024. Contracts were prepared and approved by IDOT for the Morgan Avenue and Harrison Avenue resurfacing project. A pre-construction meeting was held on September 26 with the contractor, 5K Construction Corporation. Work will start in October. The project involves reconstruction of deteriorated drainage structures, replacing sections of curb and gutter, driveways, and sidewalks, and resurfacing both Harrison Avenue and Morgan Avenue between 26th and 29th. The project will be financed by MFT funds and will be completed this construction season. Lastly, Unique Plumbing Company has substantially completed work on the Park Road water main replacement project. Sod has been placed and work has started to restore brick pavements and sidewalks. The punch list will be prepared for the contractor to complete before final acceptance. And that completes my report this evening, Mr. President.
Thank you, Trustee Stewart. Moving on to Public Safety Committee, Trustee Caputo.
Thank you, President DeCipio. I'm going to read the police summary activities for September 2023. In addition to the attached statistical summaries, the following items are being reported to apprise the village President and Board of Trustees on current police operations throughout the month of September 2023. The total number of crimes this year are 6.4% lower than last year, with 240 reported this year compared to 256 last year. Traffic enforcement is at 1,442 total tickets issued through September of 2023. Overall, police for the month of September 2023 is reported at 967 total incidents. Of those 967 incidents, 56 were assists to the fire department, 211 were self-initiated building or park checks, 177 were traffic stops, and 36 were closed home checks. Of note, staff also had to cover 13 school crossings throughout the month. Department members attended 36 hours of training along with the completion of required monthly online training at Lexipol daily training bulletins. 680 hours were spent in either field training on the police, 680 hours were spent in either field training or the police academy by new hires. Department members attended outdoor firearms training at the Lamont Police Department range. The police department participated in several September 11th ceremonies within the Grange Park and neighboring communities. The staff also assisted Forest Road School and Ogden School with back-to-school events, and Chief Contos, as the president of, his tenure as the president of the West Suburban Chiefs came to an end, and the new year has begun. Police department staff assisted with several Friday night Nazareth football games, and on Saturday, October 28th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the lobby of the LaGrange Park Village Hall, the police department, in coordination with the DEA, will be hosting a drug take-back event. Residents can discard expired prescription or over-the-counter medications by placing the pills in a baggie and disposing them into an approved container located in the lobby of the Village Hall. Reminder, please no needles, pill bottles, or liquids will be accepted. And as always, a friendly reminder about securing one's personal property at all times. Please lock your vehicles and residence, especially during overnight hours. If you are going on vacation, please utilize the new online vacation watch portal, frontlinepss.com/LaGrange Park, or log onto the village website and access the portal under the police department page. If you do not have internet access, feel free to fill out a vacation watch card at the police department between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. And that concludes my police report. On to the fire report. As requested, here's the highlights for the month of September. EMS incidents this month were 155. There have been 1,396 year-to-date compared to 1,292 year-to-date in 2022. The fire rescue incidents this month equaled 44. There have been 419 year-to-date compared to 440 year-to-date in 2022. Staff participated in the 9/11 Twilight Memorial Service at Memorial Park. On 9/11, Chief Magos provided a short presentation to several residents of Plymouth Place. Staff began working heavily on a new recruitment initiative, holding a brainstorming session, working with the board to expand residency boundaries, and working with our new communications specialist, Madeline Dow, on new materials. The Foreign Fire Insurance Board authorized IML to continue collecting and distributing fees. IDPH and the Loyola EMS system conducted inspections of both of our ambulances. And congratulations to firefighters Ecolitis and Clapsaddle, who were sworn in at the board meeting. All of our PFAS and PFOS containing firefighting foam was placed with F500 EA, an encapsulating firefighting agent, which is non-hazardous and biodegradable. Annual testing of fire hose continued throughout most weekends of the month. PW and fire staff attended fire pump testing at the Congregation of St. Joseph. Mock inspections of individual new living units at Plymouth Place were conducted with the building department to identify items of concern as they get closer to completion. A few incidents to note. On Thursday, September 7th at 12:28 a.m., we responded with an engine and chief to assist Brookfield with fire at 9022 East 31st Street, the former Burnetti's restaurant building. The fire was confined to a portion of the front canopy awning. And on Friday, September 8th at 11:32 a.m., we responded to a multiple vehicle crash on Homestead, east of Grange Road. 4 patients were transported to hospitals, and hydraulic rescue tools were used to extricate a driver from one of the vehicles. And finally, on Thursday, September 14th at 11:08 a.m., we responded to an ambulance. We responded with an ambulance to the tent collapse on 73rd Street in Bedford Park. Our ambulance transported 2 of the 26 people that were injured. And that concludes the fire report. I have one last item on the agenda. This is the presentation of DACRA. The purpose of this presentation provides a brief update to the village board about DACRA and how this software solution streamlines the full scope of municipal enforcement operations, in particular local adjudication. The general background is that the Grange Park Police Department currently utilizes the services of DACRA, formerly MSI, for the issuance and management of parking and compliance citations. For some time, the village board and staff have discussed the concept of local adjudication and the impact it would have on village services. And after several conversations with Glenn Tirialt, the Vice President of Sales, the staff felt it was imperative to have Glenn present to the village board about their services and what local adjudication can bring to the village. So staff recommendations give you some information, and we're going to have we have Glenn here to do a PowerPoint presentation and explain about the DACRA program. Go ahead, Glenn. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Village President.
Thank you, Glenn.
Trustees and city staff. I appreciate the invite to come here and discuss administrative adjudication. And all right, thank you very much for the time to come and discuss with you administrative adjudication and how it can create an effective municipal enforcement system for the Grange Park. Hello again. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about administrative adjudication, a set of rules within the state of Illinois that allow you to prosecute your own internal ordinances a little bit more effectively and efficiently than the current models that some communities are using within the municipal courts. I've been in this world for quite a while. I was in Chief Contoy's seat for quite a few years, not his right here, but in other communities, and a 25-year career in law enforcement. And then the last 15 years really focusing on administrative adjudication and how to create effective municipal enforcement systems that gain compliance, which is really the primary goal. How do we get compliance with our ordinances? I presented in many cities and groups just like this and focused my work here, particularly in the Chicagoland area. So a typical municipal enforcement system will look like this as I enter communities, and it's really a collection of sometimes disjointed and operational systems, disjointed policies, procedures, forms, and outcomes. Rarely do communities really get a chance to focus on the intentionality or the goal of their enforcement program. What's important to them? What do they try to achieve? How can they achieve it? Simply put, institutional momentum usually carries the day in what creates a village's municipal enforcement system. So what exists today is a number of concerns I hear throughout communities, not just here, but in others. One is that our enforcement program is inefficient. We don't have staff time to manage an adjudication program. Implementing a new system affects each department, and it's simply just too complicated. We hear things about the costs related to it, that this will cost taxpayers more in order to do this than the current system. And Currently, people are usually spending a lot on their enforcement programs. It's not about revenue, it's about compliance, and I believe fully that that's true. It's not about revenue. It should be solely about compliance and about gaining that compliance. And how can you do it? I hear a lot about ordinances that don't have teeth and that we don't get compliance with our building codes. Listen up here, this part's for you. We don't get compliance with our building codes. As it exists today, your enforcement program looks like this. It's within the circuit court, and it's over here on the local charges side, primarily within Maywood's branch of circuit court, managed by the state, and that's how it's typically prosecuted. But what happened is, over the number of years ago, issues were arising, primarily in Chicago is where this kind of reared its head. Many years ago, it was placing huge burden on circuit courts. These require prosecutors and additional costs that you won't see in adjudication. High fines and fees that the state gladly retains as opposed to the municipality. Lengthy and sometimes inconsistent due process. And very difficult to navigate for violators. And finally, it encourages fighting, delaying charges, and really it encourages court action as opposed to encouraging gaining compliance with the ordinance itself. The history of adjudication really started back in 1975. And in 1975, there were a few key cases, but the main one was about paper supply versus the city of Chicago, and it affirmed the authority of home rule communities. Fast forward a short 20 years, and the federal courts upheld during this case that administrative adjudication of parking violations was allowed, and most importantly, independently contracted hearing officers contracted by the municipality are in fact independent, and it allowed for these impartial hearings to be conducted. Parking violations in civil court are no longer criminal and are allowed to be in civil processes. In 1995, Mayor Daley created a special committee on city code enforcement to really look at how can this be done more effectively, how can we take this burden off of the courts that was slowing down all cases within it, how can we take these de minimis violations, move them back into the municipalities' hands, and really shift that burden away from the courts into the municipalities to give them more control over their future and over their enforcement. That resulted in 1997, the establishment of the state's administrative adjudication ordinances. Now, originally this was established with home rule and non-home rule statutes, but they've now actually been combined, and as of January 1st, they will all be under one set of codes. So what you see here on the right is the administrative adjudication world. That's what resulted from the 1997 state laws, and it's exactly the same. You'll notice, looks exactly the same as the blue one. It's the same prosecution. However, you don't need a prosecutor. It's the same rules that apply, but with a little bit more looseness in there to allow for the ease of both the citizen to navigate those waters, as well as for the city to go ahead and bring that individual before some type of tribunal. And that's managed entirely by municipal staff. How can that be? Well, the state did it to make it more efficient in a very consistent process. So violations have to have a ticket issued. There's usually typically a second notice or a notice of hearing some type, depending on what type of violation might kind of have some variance within there. Then there's an adjudication or an opportunity for an adjudication. That individual can always come before a hearing officer, probably in this very room, and have their case heard in order to, see if the city's requirements are upheld or not, and or find that they can just come into compliance to resolve their issue. After that, a final decision and order is issued. A final determination is ultimately given 35 days later when that individual has the opportunity, if they disagree with this tribunal, to go to the circuit court as well and bring it there. Ultimately, it becomes a debt due and owing to the city. Now, this sounds very complicated, but in fact, it's very prescriptive in state statutes, and within 9 weeks, you can process it all the way through. Now, what's nice is the software that you already have, you've already contracted with, is set up exactly in this manner, and it structures that way so that you are always staying compliant with state statute. Now, there's some issues right now with trying to get ordinances to catch up with that, and we look forward to helping you along that trail if this is something that the council is interested in following this manner that the Illinois has brought forward. Now, I like to also talk about municipal ordinance fine strategy because it's a very important step, and it's the logical next question that comes before boards and before city staff, which is how can we have our fines? Let's revisit them. Are they appropriate? Are they consistent with neighboring communities? And do they gain compliance? The point of fines is to gain compliance. The point of fines is not to gain revenue. That's a very clear path that the state has stated over and over and over. Now, we believe there's 3 ways at DACRA that you can do this. Number 1 is through encouragement. You should always have very clear process communication throughout this. What does the violator need to do to come into compliance and to resolve any fines that might be outstanding? We encourage multiple fine escalations after they've had a chance for the hearing. They have a chance for the hearing. If you continue a few steps, one after the other, to increase the fines that are commensurate with the additional work that city staff are doing, you should be encouraging earlier fine payment versus later fine payment. It should be convenient. You should have a variety of ways to make your payments, make your fine payments, similar to what I just heard earlier about pay online for your permits. You should do the same with your fines. And last but not least, accountability. And is there some type of action in the end, whether it's collections, a boot program, perhaps utilizing the state's iDrop program, something that can be done to have yet another hammer at the end to say we're trying to get compliance with you. Not allowing somebody to ignore you all the way through, but again, instead, continuing to escalate throughout there. Does it work? Yes, it absolutely works. We've seen it over and over in communities, and I talk about it in 3 areas. It does maximize efficiency, it does increase compliance, and it does recover enforcement costs. So it maximizes efficiency in this manner. These are actual stats from communities right here in the Chicagoland area, almost all of them Cook County, as a matter of fact. One city that was over 150,000 population, one single officer during one shift was able to write 108 snow tickets. That's because of not only the process that is the outcome of administrative adjudication, but paired with effective software that you already own. A city over 100,000 reallocated 3 staff after the implementation of an adjudication system with software. That's a very important point to note because it is a concern that this is going to be an additional burden placed on cities. In fact, it's the reverse. You're able to pull back staff, be more efficient, and reallocate them to other areas and other responsibilities. Does it increase compliance? Absolutely. There was one city we did a pretty extensive study on. They reduced driving violations by 47% in the first 2 years alone of an effective program. They instituted it, and it brought that down. With it, of course, brought down car crashes as well. A very important purpose of your municipal enforcement program. Dockets that start with 1,200 violations result in fewer than 30 hearings. A lot of people get concerned when they see an administrative adjudication system and all these court dates being put out there that they're suddenly going to have an influx of hundreds and hundreds of people. Absolutely not the case. In fact, if you're doing it right and you're doing it effectively, photographs in your tickets, photographs in your letters, you're providing the evidence to that individual and the path to resolve that ordinance violation, and you'll see fewer hearings. And last but not least, does it recover enforcement costs? It does. One community of 38,000 levied $1.4 million in new enforcement fines the first year. Now, I will say I was part of this implementation. It was a hot mess before this. There were fines all over the place. Some were exorbitant, some were way too high, some were way too low. And the problem was there was an inconsistent approach to fines. There was an inconsistent approach because it was done over the course of years, haphazardly, and it just was a real issue. So they were able to levy that $1.4 million in new enforcement fines. They also collected 50% before any other hammers at the end, collections, boots, things like that. Now, why is that important? That's important because it does what I feel is one of the most important parts of revenue related to an enforcement system, and that it takes that cost burden off of the taxpayer and moves it to the violator. The violator should be paying the cost of an enforcement system, not your average taxpayer who chooses to adhere to your ordinances. So we feel it's an important piece of recovering your enforcement costs is moving that tax burden over. We do believe it gains compliance by using this more efficient system, and it will maximize your internal efficiency as well. Happy to answer any questions you might have about this.
Anyone have any questions?
Thank you for
Trustee
your
Wagner?
presentation.
I don't have any questions, but I guess I'd just like to add that I equate compliance with fairness and consistency. And I guess I see that that's the true benefit of it. Yeah, we want everyone to be compliant, but it's a fair way to do it, that everyone's treated the same way and that the code's in place for a certain reason. And so I think it's a good step forward. We had adjudications, our own adjudications some years ago, and it was handled somewhat differently, I think, but I think this is a good step in the software that we've just recently migrated onto is really going to pave that way. So I think it's a good move for us.
Thank you, Trustee Lautner. Trustee Council?
Thank you, President DeCipio. With regard to enforcement of code violations, would our building person be able to write tickets and have them be adjudicated more efficiently? Because we have had code enforcement issues in years past that have taken forever to get resolved. So it's not just strictly for the police department to use. Is what I'm understanding.
Correct. We see multiple departments utilize it. Certainly the police department and building code use it the most, but I've also seen fire departments. I've actually seen public works departments in the past utilize it with snow getting pushed onto the roads they just plowed, being able to issue violations for that. So it's used in whatever manner, of course, the council sets forth for, the village board sets forth. With regards to building code violations, that's probably one of the best features of the system. You know, going through the typical municipal court that I showed you earlier over in Maybrook rather, it could take months before a case ever even stands before a judge, before the first hearing is even held. Whereas here, you're able to move that individual in quite quickly. Within a few weeks of issuing the violation, you're able to have them before the hearing officer, or at least entering into the door, and as we've sometimes called it, the come to Jesus meeting, and how are we going to resolve this issue? Through cooperation. Typically, administrative hearings are held every 2 weeks, so you're able to bring that person back in 2 weeks, not come back in 3 months and let us see how you're doing, but you're able to continue to bring that person back with the speed and effectiveness that you need.
Sounds good. I'm all on it. Thanks.
Go ahead, trustee Zora.
Thank you. We've spoken about adjudication for years, so I think this makes sense and will help expedite everything and use our staff time more efficiently, and then hopefully alleviate some of the building violations too, because I feel like those drag on for a long time. So I'm in favor of this. Thank you.
Glenn, I'm in favor too. I think it's a great idea. We've talked about it for a long time. Julie had mentioned to me, though, one thing that, and maybe I'm not sure if you're privy to the numbers that would be generated here for us, and whether it would be efficient for us to do it solely or combine with a local community with the same name and put our resources together to decrease the cost it would cost us to get an adjudicator here. What's your thoughts on that?
We've had some discussions, and you know, it's yes is the short answer to that question. It absolutely is. I would expect hearings, your typical hearing for your village would sometimes be a half hour to cover everybody that's at the hearing. Sometimes it might be an hour and a half. Well, when you combine that with 1 or 2 or 3 agencies, you're now municipalities, you're able to, of course, have a more effective balancing of those costs and those efforts. So I do applaud that, and I think it's a wise use of collaborating with neighbors and reducing costs.
No other questions? Julia, did you have anything you wanted to add? Chief?
Just want to add one additional piece of information. So back in 2012, we did a local revenue study. So I'm just providing a little bit of specific information behind our history with looking at administrative adjudication. It was at that study with the village board where we identified a move back to administrative adjudication as an option for us to make sure that we're being as efficient as we can be. So I think we did spend quite a bit of time over the years in looking at this, and it's always for us going to be a matter of can we do it efficiently and really having a good handle on what needs to be done in order to transition over to this type of due process, local due process. I think there's another benefit related to juveniles. It's always better to have juvenile cases held at the locale rather than sending them in another community over to Maybrook for those types of hearings. I think there's always a benefit in streamlining our municipal code in a way that works not only in compliance with the new state law, which becomes effective on January 1, but also ensures that it works lockstep with the process that DACRA has put in place to ensure that nothing gets missed in terms of notices of violation all the way to the hearing date and follow up if there's a no-show or there's more work to be done as a result of that hearing. I just wanted to make sure that I added those points to the conversation, and from here I'll turn it over to Chief Contois. It looks like he had a comment to make.
Just one of the things I'd like to add, Glenn, thanks for taking time. He came from out of state to do this presentation, so thank you for that. One of the things that we're seeing
Battery.
Thank you. One of the things that we're seeing currently at the Maybrook Courthouse is a lot of the judges are dismissing parking and compliance citations, trying to push them back on the local municipalities. So any fines that we would otherwise see, the judges are just dismissing the cases automatically, trying to push the burden back on the municipality. So this has been going on for some time, and I think we've done our research and our due diligence, and I think this is something that we most likely need to move forward to.
Thank you, Chief. Larry or Maggie, do you guys have any questions for Glenn? Chief?
No, this is more from the building end of things, since I kind of oversaw that for several years. I would just like to, my concern is, and I would just like the board to understand, we've kind of taken a very, not hands-off approach, but we don't write many tickets. And one of those reasons is time that it takes to get into the court. So I think in the long term, this will be good, but I would also, if we are going to write a lot more tickets and use the adjudication like we should, I think the board needs to understand that a lot of our code enforcement may involve contractors right now because we have a lot going on. But this adjudication, if we are going to use it properly, you need to understand that people are going to be getting tickets that don't usually get tickets, because we have taken a very, compliance approach without taking them to court and giving people a lot of time. In many cases, too much time. But we've tried to work with people very close. So I think it has to be done because it'll change things in the long run and make people will understand it better, and we can work closer instead of waiting, going back to court 3 months later if it gets continued. But I think the board just needs to understand that if we are going to use this from the building and code enforcement side, we don't typically write many tickets, and there may be some pushback, or we may have to tolerate some pushback if we increase the amount of tickets we write. Again, I think once we get over that hump, it will be very good because it'll streamline processes. People will be used to better enforcement. But I just did want to mention that was one of the concerns I've had all along, just to make sure we're taking a different route at some point.
Chief, I think that's a great point. I think part of that is the education process that will go into this, in educating our residents of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and explain everything thoroughly in our rose clippings or wherever we need to do it. So great point, thank you. Any questions for Glenn?
I just, I really enjoyed the snow plowing ticket portion, comment on that, but I think it could actually add possibly some things just from the public works side, such as tree planting. Again, I don't mind when residents plant trees generally, as long as they meet what our ordinance says, but a lot of times they plant unwanted species, stuff that is should not be on the parkways or even in anybody's backyard that are invasive. So I think there's some aspects that we could look into that as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Mark, anything? Ed, anything?
So I'm familiar with the process, and we've used it where I was currently employed, and it does work. Our position has always been, there's a warning, there's a second warning. The second warning says, hey, if you don't comply within 30 days, we're going to write you a ticket. So they know it's coming, and usually the first letter, second letter, they'll comply. The ones that don't probably belong in adjudication. And it does work. We do get compliance. There's always going to be, the cases where you don't, but I'd support it 100% from my perspective and my little bit of experience that I've had with it.
Great.
So thank you.
Thank you. See, you're an asset already, see? Any other comments? Trustee Lautner?
Thank you, Mr. President. Do you see this as a significant impact on administration and finance for managing this? I know it produces revenue that should pay for itself, but is it going to be a significant impact on those departments?
Not in the end. I will absolutely say just making an implementation. You're making a big switch from how you're operating right now, and you're going to dig up a lot of policies, procedures, ordinances that are going to need to be changed over time as this gets implemented. So I think you can anticipate to see that kind of bell curve of a little bit of effort on the front end, but then it will smooth things out in a much greater fashion. It really, both to the fire chief and to your new building code director's point, the software that you're using actually has a lot of prevention methods within it. Warning notices are tracked, items and information that are then provided so that when you go to enforce, whether it's police, building code, or public works, when they go to enforce, they're really able to see what the history of this individual is and whether it's somebody that, you know, only needs a warning to gain their compliance as opposed to going straight to tickets. So I know I spent a lot of time talking about tickets, but it's not always just about that.
Okay. Thank you, Glenn. I didn't realize you came from out of state to be with us tonight, so thank you.
No better place to be.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Caputo.
Thank you, President.
So moving on to Public Works Committee in the absence of Trustee Sheehan, Trustee Zora.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to report the Department of Public Works report for September 2023. Staff replaced 3 lead water service lines with copper pipe this month, along with repair of 2 water main breaks. A sinkhole was repaired and 2 new catch basins were installed. The village brush collection program continued. Debris was hauled from the village dump site this month. Progress has been made and should conclude in the beginning of next month. Staff completed tree removals in-house and will continue throughout the year. Contractors have completed the priority tree removal list and will begin stump grinding in October. Sidewalk replacements and concrete street patching locations are marked out for the work to be started this month. Street patching and parkway restorations have been completed. From utility excavations, GIS work has continued, collecting data on village-owned assets along with continued training throughout the village. Water meters are read in section number 13, 15. Bacterial samples were taken. Various water and sewer work orders were completed along with resident tree concerns and general construction inquiries. Routine maintenance on the department fleet and equipment was also performed, and that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Zora. Finance Committee, Trustee Lautner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Following is the report through September 2023. Village has completed 5 months now, or 42% of fiscal year 2024, which began May 1 and concludes on April 30th of 2024. The detailed revenue and expense report and comparison charts are provided for our review. Fiscal year to date, general fund revenue is $3.1 million, or 29.5% of the annual revenue budget, and $137,736, or 4.2% less than last year. Property tax receipts are $79,405, greater than last year due to the timing issues with Cook County's tax extension and collection. Other local taxes are lower by $43,000, almost $43,500, or 11%, due to lower utility and telecom tax receipts. Intergovernmental receipts for the period are down $58,681, or 3.5% from last year. The primary cause for this variance is income tax receipts, which are at $60,930, or 6.1% lower than last year. And sales tax continues to trend above last year, while sales use tax and personal property replacement tax are lower. A decrease in income tax was expected following the significant increase last year. Based on current Illinois Municipal League estimates, the total income tax for the fiscal year will be slightly above budget. Licenses and registration fees are down almost $7,000, or 5.5%, and that's due to vehicle sticker receipts trending lower than the prior year. Pardon me. Permit receipts are at $210,231, or 42.9% less than the prior year. And that's primarily due to the higher permit fees received last year for the Plymouth Place project. Charges for services are $10,342, or 2.2% lower than last year. Fine revenue is at $9,800, or 20.3% lower than last year. And miscellaneous revenue is $122,387, or 175% greater than last year, and that's due primarily to increased interest income. The total general fund expenditures are at 34.2% of the annual budget, which is $177,682, or 5.4% greater than last year. and most importantly, all departments are within budget expectations. And one item for discussion and action. Is the 2023 property tax levy estimate. Background on this, as I've reported and read in past meetings, the truth in taxation law requires that the village board estimate the amount of property taxes to be levied at least 20 days prior to the adoption of the annual tax levy. The village's proposed 2023 tax levy ordinance will be reviewed at the November 14th work session and then included on the agenda for the board approval at the November 28th meeting. The state of Illinois property tax extension limitation law, as we refer to PTAL, limits the amount the village may increase the aggregate levy each year to the lesser of 5% or the change in the consumer price index. The term aggregate levy is specifically defined by the Truth in Taxation Law to include the corporate and special purpose levies and excludes levies for debt service. For the 2023 levy, the PTAL CPI change is 6.5%, and therefore the limiting factor is reduced to 5%. The PTAL authorized the village to collect additional taxes on new property values. Over the past 10 years, the value of new property has ranged from 0% to 0.4% of the village's total equalized assessed value. We will not know the actual amount of new value until well after the village's tax levy ordinance is due to the county. As such, an estimated increase of 2% has historically been incorporated into the levy estimate calculation, and that's to ensure that all potential new value is included. The county will then reduce the village's actual extension to the amount allowed under the PTAL. That's an important point. The proposed estimate aggregate levy for 2023 is $4,338,105, and that is 7.1% above the 2022 extension of $4,096,864. The estimated aggregate levy is greater than 5%. Therefore, a public hearing is required by the Truth in Taxation law. It's important to note that for most residents, the actual increase in the village's property tax due to the aggregate levy should be approximately the PTAL CPI amount of 5%. The 7.1% total increase includes the 2% new value estimate. The village's 2023 property tax levy will also include a debt service amount for the 2016 road and fire bonds approved by referendum. For the 2023 levy, the debt service levy is $1,244,750, and that's compared to $1,246,000 for 2022. The village's board abated $30,000 of the 2022 debt service levy because there were additional funds available due to interest and the county's loss factor. A similar abatement will be presented for the village board consideration based on the projected balance of the debt service fund. This is a standard discussion and formulas as it has in past years, and as such, staff recommends the village board approve the proposed levy estimate at the October 24th meeting. That's for the estimate. So, Mr. President and Board, I'd like to submit a motion that the President and Village Board of Trustees estimate that the amount necessary to be raised from the 2023 property tax levy is $4,388,105, exclusive of debt service, which amount is 7.1% greater than the amount of taxes extended for 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Trustee Lautner?
Yes, and as mentioned, the vernacular, the formulas are all consistent with past years. It appears to be a little bit higher this year. When you look at the CPI compared to the PTEL, but we're still limited to the 5% plus the projected or potential value of new properties. So that's why it might appear a little bit higher, but it's still limited based on the law. So this is, again, motion and approval for the estimate, the actual approval of the abatement for the tax levy will be in the two meetings that I mentioned, finally in November 28th meeting. That's all I have to add, and at some point after the board has opportunity for questions, perhaps Finance Director Larry could make any comments too.
Okay, anybody else have any comments?
Yes,
Caputo?
so this is not for approval, this is just for estimate discussion of this percentage. Is this negotiable to do this, or do we have to go with the 7.1%? And that is, I just want to get a clarification on that.
Okay.
This is for motion and action, so it is for approval, but you are approving an estimate.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? There was comment in one of the posts online from one of our residents, and I gave it to Julie and Larry. You saw it, Larry? Would you care to comment on that?
So these, again, as was noted by Trustee Wagner in the reading memo, the 7% includes a 2% new value addition. So when we talk about new value, the PTEL, which is commonly referred to as the tax cap law, allows the village as a non-home rule community to levy taxes up to the 5% this year is the maximum. A maximum of 5% for the CPI. Historically, if you look over, say, the last decade, the CPI has been very low comparatively to it. It's been limited to somewhere in the 1 to 2 to 3% increase plus the new value. The recent increases in the CPI, given the inflationary environment that we've been in the last 2 years, has actually pushed the CPI above that 5% maximum. So the PTEL limits the village to 5%. When we talk about, and just a diagram to really, this is trying to make a simplification for everybody. When we talk about the 5%, that is going on the new value. So the existing value of the village, the existing value of everybody's taxes for 2022 is based on their equalized assessed value. And so when we increase it for 2023, that is the base that 5% applies to. So when we talk about the existing base, is what you see, it's typically the PTEL maximum, the 5% for 2023. The 2% applies to the new value that might come into the village from different sources, new homes, new building value, new permits that come on each year. And so that has typically been somewhere between 0 and 0.5%, but we just have used 2% to make sure that we capture all that value, because as a non-home rule community under the PTEL system, if the village does not capture that new value, you cannot go back and grab it in the future. So that would be essentially lost revenue for the village in perpetuity.
Thank you, Larry. Anyone else have any other comments? No? Trustee Stewart, you're good? Okay. Megan, call the roll.
Trustee Launer?
Yes.
Trustee Zora?
Yes.
Trustee Council?
Yes.
Trustee Stewart?
Yes.
Trustee Caputo?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously, Mr. President.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you, Trustee Lautner.
Thank you, and that concludes the finance report for September and the one item for discussion and action.
Other reports. Village Clerk,
No report this evening, Mr. President.
our Village Treasurer, our Village Engineer, our Village Attorney,
No report, Mr. President.
now our Commercial Revitalization Committee, Trustee Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the CRC report for this month. Designs, Artistry, Ribbon Cutting event took place last Friday, October 20th. Designs Artistry offers permanent makeup, lashes, and skincare services, as well as professional education and training courses. This new business is located at 708 East 31st Street in the Plaza 31 Shopping Center. Chamber of Commerce event, Friday, October 27th from 4 to 6:30 p.m. Trolleys will be loading up and going down 31st Street with stops at all of your favorite businesses to trick or treat. Mark your calendar and don't miss out on all of the spooky fun. Lastly, our CRC committee meeting will take place, the last one of the year will take place on Tuesday, December 12th at 6 p.m. at Village Hall. This is an opportunity for businesses and members of the public to attend and provide input on how the village can best support new and existing business and enhance the commercial areas in the Grange Park. And that concludes my report. I also have an item up for discussion. Development Advisory Services. The purpose is to discuss a forthcoming proposal for Development Advisory Service for certain properties along LaGrange Road and Oak Avenue. General background is that our Commercial Revitalization Committee had a meeting August 22nd, and Fran LaFour-Rude of SB Friedman provided a presentation on development advisory services to identify redevelopment potential for two properties in the 31st Street and North LaGrange Road Business District, one being a Jiffy Lube on 1119 North LaGrange Road, the other being Superior Cleaners, which is on 1123 North LaGrange Road. The proposed services include evaluation of the market opportunities for retail redevelopment, preparation of site capacity concept plans, and evaluation of the current value and potential revenue generation from redevelopment of the sites. Both property owners have been contacted and are supportive of this study. Funds for this project are included in our 23-24 budget, and those funds are $55,000. Since that meeting, staff identified an additional opportunity to utilize development advisory services to support local economic development. Woodmen of the World Insurance Society has contacted the village to express interest in redeveloping the outlots north of Jewel Osco. The village owns a small public right-of-way off Oak Avenue and east of the vacant Fifth Third Bank, which Woodmen would like to purchase in order to redevelop the north side of their property. Woodmen is now seeking the village's feedback on the future redevelopment of this site. At the CRC meeting on October 10th, staff shared a proposed scope of services from SB Friedman to conduct a market and site capacity analysis to identify redevelopment potential for the outlots. Economic development funds from the village market TIF and or business development district could be used for these services. Woodmen has also offered to contribute to this effort. The CRC discussed these projects over 2 meetings. The committee was supportive of the proposed scopes of services and recommended bringing a proposal from SB Friedman to the village board. Motion action requested. This item is up for discussion only. Staff anticipates the proposal from SB Friedman to be placed on the agenda for discussion and action in November, at the November work session meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Stewart. Comments? Trustee Stewart?
You know, we had this meeting last week or a couple of weeks ago, and you know, those areas around Jiffy Lube and Superior Cleaners are grossly underutilized, and I think this is a great opportunity to have some professionals help us sort of spruce up that area, and we worked with them previously, so I think that's a really good thing. And also layering in the Jewel Osco outlot and having Woodman help us out with contributing to that effort, I think is also a great thing. So I'm in full support of it.
Thank you, Trustee Stewart. And I think it's amazing that all 3 parcels are willing to cooperate and work with us and get this moving forward and see if we can redevelop those properties. Trustee Caputo, any comments?
No, I agree with everybody present DeCipio. I think we would like to get that nice corridor. I feel like we've made headway with redeveloping 31st Street, you know, both on the east and west side of the train tracks, and it would be nice to, you know, have that major thoroughfare that people see coming in and out of our town, coming from Westchester, and seeing if we could have some opportunities to put some new businesses in and generate some more income.
We gotta
for
find a
our
realtor.
village. Yeah.
Trustee Council?
Thank you, President DeCipio. I wholeheartedly agree with Trustee Stewart. It's very underutilized, and it's unsightly. And for as long as I've lived here, it has been, and I've lived here a really long time. So I think that this is a great opportunity for all parties involved to seek this assistance out. So I'm all in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Council. Trustee Zora?
I wanted to say I spoke to 2 residents today at school pickup, and they brought this up, the outlot, and then they also requested restaurants, a bakery, and a brewery there. So, so I think the residents are in favor of this. Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Zora. Trustee Lautner?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just glad to see the village being involved in helping to make things happen rather than watch things happen. So I appreciate everyone's efforts in hopefully moving this forward and taking advantage of a lot of opportunities there that I think could really turn into some pretty cool stuff for the village. So thanks for your efforts.
Yeah, I want to thank the CRC for all the work that you guys are doing under your leadership, Trustee Stewart. Also, I want to thank staff. You know, it's amazing what you guys can do, and we think your plates are full, and you keep putting more food on it. So thank you. It's amazing what you can do with the small staff that we have, in the small building that we have, with this many small resources we have. But you make it happen and you make it work, and we're so grateful for that. So thank you. Thank you, Trustee Stewart. Where are we at here? No motion. That's what I'm trying to find here. Okay, motion to approve Committee and Collectors Report is presented.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I just have one thing, and that is that the other night we had the chamber dinner. The annual dinner was last Thursday, and we had full participation of every trustee on this board, and I think that was fabulous. I think it showed everybody else in our community that was there that we are united, we have a great group, and we have a phenomenal board. So thank you all for all that we represent here. Public participation. You're not public anymore, Ed, you're part of us. So any new business? Okay, motion to move into closed session.
I'd like to submit a motion to move into closed session for the purpose of discussing the selection of a person to fill a village committee according to 5 ILCS 120/2C3, not to return to regular session until the next regularly scheduled meeting in this room.
Second.
Megan, call the roll.
Trustee Lautner?
Yes.
Trustee Zora?
Yes.
Trustee Council?
Yes.
Trustee Stewart?
Yes.
Trustee Caputo?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously, Mr. President.
Thank you, Megan. We'll move into executive session. Probably stay here.
We're going to stay here.